Welcome everybody. It's Pastor Keith here. Hope you guys are doing well. City Church Garland and our other friends watching on Facebook Live and Twitter. I'd like to invite you into a time of prayer and praise during the pandemic once again. And I'd like to begin this time reading from Psalm 62. In Psalm 62, David said, "For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly shaken. How long will you attack a man to batter him, like a leaning wall, a tottering fence? They only plan to thrust him down from his high position. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. Selah. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God rest my salvation and my glory. My mighty rock, my refuge is God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Selah. Those of high estate are but a breath. Those of low estate are but a breath, and those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up, and they are together lighter than a breath. Put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love. For you will render to a man according to his work." As we begin our time of prayer and praise here, I want to point us to something that we see throughout Scripture, and particularly in the Psalms. We see this idea of waiting on God. And this idea of waiting and practicing waiting is not an easy thing for us Americans. We want things now. Many of us are frustrated because when we order Amazon packages, they don't get there to our homes the next day, right? And we're right now in a time of waiting. We're in a time of waiting for God to show up. We're in a time of waiting where things can go back to normal, if that's going to happen at all. We're waiting. And for the Christian, the Bible calls us to a type of waiting that's not passive, but a waiting that is eager and active and ready to respond as soon as the Lord calls us to act, to speak. But David tells his soul, he says, "For God alone, my soul waits in silence." Waiting in silence for God alone. This is a good thing for us, to just look to God, hope in God, wait for God in silence. And he says it again down in verse 5. "For God alone, my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He is my rock. He is my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God rest my salvation, my glory, my mighty rock, my refuge is God." We can wait with confidence. We can wait in peace and rest, believing and hoping and expecting God to show up for us, because when we wait for him, he acts on behalf of those who wait on him. He shows up. He loves to show up and work on behalf of those who are waiting for him. Here's a quote here from Eugene Peterson about this idea of waiting in God. And he says this, he says, "In prayer, we are aware that God is in action, and that when the circumstances are ready, when others are in the right place, and when my heart is prepared, he will call me into action. Waiting in prayer is a disciplined refusal to act before God acts. Waiting is our participation in the process that results in, quote, the time fulfilled." So we wait for God. And not only that, we pour out our hearts to God. Psalm 62 verse 8 says, "Trust in him at all times." At all times, O people, pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. We're creating this space, this hour or two every day, a time of prayer and a time of praise, so that you and I can pour out our hearts to God in praise and prayer, that we can pour out our complaints, our requests. We can cast our anxieties upon him, our cares on him, because he cares for us. And what a privilege you and I have to bring everything to God in prayer, to find peace and rest for our souls in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the pandemic. There's a place of peace and rest for the people of God. And so we can wait silently for God in quietness and trust, believing and hoping in him that he's going to be a refuge for us, that he's going to show up for us, and we can pour out our hearts to him. For to him belongs power, and to him belongs steadfast love. So let's trust him, saints. Let's wait on the Lord. Let's pour out our heart to him. Join me.